Slept on Cinema is sponsored by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know someone who's struggling with shoe tying for any reason, Training Ties is the perfect solution. Easily one of the worst films I've ever seen.
Appallingly stupid and incompetently made.
The movie insulted my intelligence many times.
The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen can be summed up in one word: ordinary.
Repugnant.
Some might say that this is a mindless summer action film and it's just for fun. And they would be right, except for the fact that it's not very much fun.
If you strip this film of its effects, not even the platform would remain. Unplug the computer and the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen disappears.
Destined to go down in the history books as the Heaven's Gate of superhero flicks.
As formulaic as Dr. Jekyll's potion, this misadventure was a waste of an extremely interesting premise.
Welcome to this week's episode of Slept on Cinema. I'm your host, Stan Steamer.
I'm Grove Street.
And this week we are getting into the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. For those who aren't familiar with the podcast, we only explore movies that are at or below 50% on both the critic score and the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. And we structure the podcast so that the first half is no spoilers. You can listen along if you haven't watched the movie yet. Pause for a break for you to go watch or rewatch the film, and then come back and learn a little bit more about the film.
Great explanation. And this movie certainly qualifies as being under 50% in both categories. I'll get to the rotten premise here. A team of extraordinary figures culled from great adventure literature are called to stop a villain intent on turning the nations of the world against one another. Critics, 17%. Audience, 44%.
Again, this is one that I totally am not surprised by the critic score. But it is always interesting when there's a big multiple of the critic score to the audience score. I think it sometimes shows you that critics are just, as we know, a little bit out of touch.
Yeah, and this is definitely the type of movie when you watch, you go, there's no chance that critics will enjoy this. There is a chance the audience will, and they did and they didn't. Like, most people didn't like the movie, but this made, we might get to this, but internationally, it made over $200 million on close to I think $70 million budget. So it crushed. It just didn't do amazing in America. I think a lot of the sales came from the international viewings, from DVD sales and from DVD rentals, but it made a lot of money.
Yeah, I think it probably also suffered from probably had very high expectations. Like there was a lot of thought that this movie was just going to blow up and be the franchise maker at the time. That has yet to happen.
And for the people who are big fans of the graphic novel League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I think they were looking forward to this movie only to see how there wasn't a lot of carryover from the graphic novels to this movie.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue and just a little bit of background, again, for the film here. So this came out July 11th, 2003. It was the number 2 in the box office its first weekend, continuing a streak for us. First in the box office that weekend, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, which also opened that same weekend. It was a big summer for sequels. Pirates of the Caribbean sequel, Terminator 3, Legally Blonde 2, a Charlie's Angels sequel, Too Fast, Too Furious, Matrix Reloaded, X2, the X-Men sequel, and Dumb and Dumber all came out that summer. So huge sequel summer. So this was probably, if you were looking for something other than a sequel, you were pretty excited about this, I would think.
Yeah, some great sequels in there and some awful ones, but you didn't know which was which unless you went to the theater. So I'm sure that definitely took up some people's time and money going to see those movies.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, this was originally a graphic novel. So it was the same author that also wrote The Watchmen, which has now had a couple different film adaptations. And then there was the HBO adaptation that was great that came out a year or two ago.
Yeah, really I think they're not doing any more. There was just that one season of it. I thought that would be like a whole franchise, but that was an incredible show.
Yeah, and I'd actually read that graphic novel because I'd never read a graphic novel before. I read that one, and it was great. I now feel like I should read this one too. So the author really didn't get that involved in the production of this film and kind of distanced himself from this film right from the get-go. And a lot of people wish they had distanced themselves from this film from the start. There were a lot of disputes on this set is what it sounds like. Predominantly, a lot of those disputes were between the star, Sean Connery, star of all stars, you could say, and the director. They got off probably on the wrong foot in that when they started filming this, they were filming in Prague, and there were just some catastrophic floods going through Europe at the time. These rains and flooding destroyed $7 million in sets right off the bat. They actually sank Nemo's sub, had to rebuild that entire sub. 2 weeks of delays right there. It sort of seemed to be an indication of what was to come. I think that this director apparently took his time, to say the least, on setting up every little shot, making sure the lighting was right, getting everything done. And this didn't sit well with Connery. I think Connery is sort of at the the tail end, maybe the very tail end of his career at this point. And he wasn't looking to get in with a director here who was just adjusting every little thing, maybe for the best, maybe not, tough to say. Connery said that filming was a nightmare. On the first day, I realized he, being the director, was insane. The director even at one point shut down production because an elephant gun prop didn't look quite right. So he shut down production for something like, the entire day. Sean Connery just sitting around while the director figures it out. And I think you can see some of that in the film, because I think that the sets, everything, the design, the shots are done really well. And you can see that panache that comes through the screen. But I could imagine for a lot of the actors that's sitting through that, it's just not what they thought they signed up for.
I had also read that at the premiere, the director didn't show up, and Sean Connery was asked, where was he? And his response was, check the local asylum.
Yeah, it's pretty clear they did not get along. And the interesting part, right? This is Sean Connery's last film, and this is this director's last film. So this, whatever happened on set here, ended two careers.
Yeah, apparently the $17 million that Sean Connery received for doing this movie didn't make up for the procedure of actually filming the movie.
Right. I mean, you figure he must have made so much money. I don't know what his deals were on those Bond films, but I know they on those films asked him to come back a number of times after he said he was done and never going to do another Bond film again. And they just paid whatever it cost to get him in there. So I imagine he had quite a bit of ownership on the back end of those too. So,
oh, for sure. And this was supposed to be like an ensemble cast of like a bunch of famous actors and actresses, well, actors for this movie. But because of Sean Connery's budget, they had to skimp on that. That's why most of the other people, you don't really even know who's in the movie.
One interesting thing was that the author and illustrator of the graphic novel apparently actually wrote the Quatermain character based on Sean Connery. They had to have him, obviously, but for whatever reason, at least in Sean Connery's mind, it just didn't come together for him.
I had read that Sean Connery took the role in this movie because he had declined roles in other movies that he didn't understand the script. He was supposed to be the architect in The Matrix, as well as Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. And he missed out on millions and millions of dollars because he didn't understand the script and the story. It was just too operatic or fantastical for him. So he took this one and he didn't understand the script, but he took it because he had missed out on those other scripts that he didn't understand, thinking that this was going to be one of those. And it wasn't. So it was a big letdown for him.
Yes, this was his FOMO movie. He had
his FOMO movie. Yep.
Extreme FOMO led him to make this movie, for better or worse, I suppose.
That was great as always. Do you want to get to Bolo?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for puns.
So many puns. It's great. If you're a lover of puns,
Dorian Gray,
as I am, it was a great experience in that regard. I'm going to say be on the lookout for a pair of Morpheus sunglasses.
Be on the lookout for toddling.
I'm going to follow that up with be on the lookout, Bolo, for guzzling.
Be on the lookout for an Austin Powers-esque steamroller scene.
It won't take long. I'm going to say be on the lookout for an evil Santa Claus outfit.
Oh, wow. That's a great pull. Be on the lookout for misogyny because it's everywhere.
Say, be on the lookout for a questionable fart. Now, I've watched this scene a number of times, and I cannot tell if it is in fact a fart, but I will let you be the judge.
I'm going to have to go back and rewatch. I'll piggyback a little bit on my last one, but be on the lookout for women with a speaking role in this movie.
I'm going to say be on the lookout for a very small shot glass.
Be on the lookout for Freemason symbols.
And be on the lookout for a really awesome library ladder.
That's an incredible ladder. I have a bunch here. There's a lot. This movie's pretty long. There's lots of fun parts to it. Be on the lookout for diesel punk. Big time.
I didn't even realize that was a style, but now I know that it is. And it's.
I had no idea. I learned it during this movie.
I'm going to say be on the lookout for a golden gun. Maybe a nod to James Bond.
Very good. Be on the lookout for exposition.
Quite a bit of that as well. I'm going to say be on the lookout for a recording disc.
Be on the lookout for mutton chops.
I'll go be on the lookout for indoor use of a flamethrower.
Not advised. Be on the lookout for a crotch stab. Our first one of the podcast.
Ooh. Or maybe avert your eyes.
Yeah, right.
All right, my last one here. I'm going to say be on the lookout for one old tiger. Perhaps very symbolic.
That was going to be my last one as well, but I'll toss in be on the lookout for the acronym ASS. It may have something to do with the American. All right. I think you're going to need one with this movie, so this is a good segue here. What drink to pair best with this movie? What would you go with?
So this is maybe a little atypical, but I'm going to just say anything from a beaker. Whatever you're drinking, pour it in a beaker, guzzle it if you want.
Not the whole thing.
But anything from a beaker, let it up, good to go.
Have you ever had anything from a beaker?
I haven't. And I was watching this movie and I was like, how is this not a thing that's, took over? How is this not trendy for like 6 months where everyone just drinks out of beakers?
Yeah, I would love to give it a try. I think you do a better job than we see in this movie, but he gets the point across for sure. But a beaker, that's great. Maybe you can have this drink in your beaker. I think I'm going to go with absinthe. In the late 1800s, it was a very, very big drink in Europe, known to have some mind-altering properties, which may help you get through certain parts of this movie.
I think this would be a great movie to watch while drinking absinthe. I think the scenery alone would just come alive.
All right, so the perfect drink would be absinthe out of a beaker when watching this movie. So this is the part where you get a chance to go watch the movie if you have seen it. Maybe a good chance to rewatch it if you haven't seen it. And we'll see you on the other side after you watch it.
Enjoy.
Their powers are legendary. Their origins are unknown. Their methods are extreme. But when our future's at stake, they'll be the world's last hope.
And the game is on.
LXG, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
All right, that was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. I know we were sort of making fun of it a little bit more than we do for a lot of our films, but you can't get around the fact that it is just a fun film to watch. I had a great time.
Yeah, me too. We talked about this before we started recording, how I had kind of like ebbed and flowed while we were watching this movie the last couple of weeks where, going into the first time, I was super excited. The second time, it kind of dragged a little bit and I was noticing too many flaws. And then by the third time, I was just back in, having a great time, seeing it for what it was and just enjoying the movie.
Yeah, I think this is another example of some of the films that we enjoy here, where it's not the perfect movie. No one's going to say that this is the greatest movie of all time, but there are so many elements of this movie that are just really, really good. When you're watching it, you're like, wow, this scene's fantastic. This scene's fantastic. This element of this movie is fantastic. The whole thing, it doesn't come together perfectly, but that's okay. You still get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
It's perfectly okay. That's why we have this podcast. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to the draft. And you have the first overall pick.
This is another one of these ones. I don't think there's a obvious first round, first pick here. I think there's a lot of different ways you could go. I am going to go with, and maybe this is a reach here, but I'm going to go with the libraries. Every single library that was in this movie, I loved. I was like, I need to go redecorate my house. I need to put a library in. It makes a lot of sense with a movie like this. Obviously, it's full of literary references. All the characters are drawn from classic works of literature. And they spent so much time designing these libraries to be just perfect, which makes perfect sense. They were beautiful. M's library, Dorian Gray's library, even the sort of collection of books and scrolls in the castle at the end. I love those libraries. They were really, really well done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there must have been some subliminal messaging in this movie, because I got two books during this process, being the graphic novel, and I ordered the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde book as well, because I just wanted to learn more about that character. So it definitely encourages reading when watching this book. I was
the same way. I got the Portrait of Dorian Gray, or the Picture of Dorian, whatever the name of that book is. I got the audiobook version. So I was kind of embarrassed watching this. It's like, wow, I haven't read any of these classic works of literature. I feel like they were books you were supposed to read in high school, maybe.
But it's okay that you didn't. It's as long as you knew, if you took like a Cliff's Notes version of every one of these stories, you have enough information. Like, most of it doesn't even dive that deep, or even worse, has it gets the story wrong that it's referencing. So I don't think you even need to know too much. It helps to know, oh, okay, yeah, Dorian Gray, the picture, and oh yeah, Jekyll and Hyde, I've heard of him. You don't need to know too much going in. That's a great pick. My pick, I thought, was the clear number one of this movie, and the reason why he was paid $17 million. Sean Connery. Whatever flaws you have of this movie, he really crushes his character, Alan Quatermain. He does a great job in every scene. He delivers his lines perfectly. This is, unfortunately, the movie isn't well regarded, but he does an incredible job in his last movie.
Yeah, I was hoping that I could sneak him in the second round, because I did just really want to get the libraries, but that's a great pick. I'm a huge James Bond fan. He's obviously the greatest James Bond of all time, and he's just an amazing actor. Great in this. He's great in a lot of things. I did, when in some of the research on this blew my mind, this little fact here. I'm sure you've seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yep. He
was only 12 years older than Harrison Ford.
What? I would have guessed 30 years minimum.
Right. That blew me away. That
was part of what besides how this movie did, that's part of what I read, that the reason why he retired is because he didn't want to get old man roles. He wanted to still be the love interest in the movie, the action hero in a movie. He didn't want to be some old guy toddling off.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense given the background. I mean, he got into acting on a whim. I think he had at first also he was a Mr. Universe, and then got into acting, and then, became one of the most iconic, suave characters of all time. I could see how you don't want to be the guy sipping tea telling you about how it, used to be uphill both ways on his way to work.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. I'm really excited for my next pick. So my second pick, I'm going to go with the assembly of a group of characters. So anytime a movie has we got to go get this guy, we're going to go get that guy, and who are we getting next for our team? And we're going to have Alan Quatermain, because he's the big game hunter, to go catch Mr. Hyde, to bring him to our group. And wait, who's this? We have a vampiress. We have Dorian Gray. Everyone has their own. And then Nemo comes in with all of his technology and kung fu fighting that he has as well. Everyone has a different skill that they bring to the unit. So anytime you put the team, I mean, it's like going back to Blues Brothers, getting the team back together.
Yeah, that's a great pick. And it is fun when they're assembling everyone and you're sort of you have the sense of getting the team together. We're going to go kick some ass. And obviously in the years since then, it seems like you go back and look at what all the most popular, most successful movies have been. They've all been movies that have that scene in it.
Absolutely. I mean, the Avengers eventually just culminated in that every single character from Marvel ended up in that final movie.
Yep. All right. For my second pick, I'm going to go with all the scenery and how the scenes all looked. I thought that all the sets and the designs of everything just looked so cool. When they were in Venice. All the buildings in Venice looked just really, really well done. The scenes in the submarine, all the rooms, all the details, every single scene was just so. It was almost like it was from a comic book. It was just like that careful level of detail to all the elements of the scene. It had that look to it of something that was really crafted, almost from scratch. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was. The revealing of the Sword of the Sea was really, really cool, and how big it was. And it was just so much of that in the movie.
Yeah. My third pick here is when they have a flashback in a movie that shows you all these other little elements that didn't seem all that important at the time, but were actually all very important for something else. And they do that here, where they show Dorian Gray, how he took the blood and how he took the vial and all these things at the time that you were like, oh, that's maybe a little weird, but you don't totally put it together. I love that flashback scene where all the pieces get put together. And you're like, oh my God, of course. I thought they did a great job of that here, and I love whenever that happens in any movie.
Yeah, and you talk about this a lot, as far as like rewarding the good movie watcher, and that's what that is. That's like a payoff for someone who's paying close attention.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, you thought that was weird because it was.
Yeah, I love that. Any scene, and they did a great job here.
That's a great pick. My third pick, I'm gonna go with public domain characters. This sent me down just a wormhole of looking up. I had no idea. Like most of these characters are readily available, public domain, to make a movie, talk about whatever. And then I just went online and just found so many characters that are available to anyone to make a movie about, these public domain characters. Let me list off a few here: Robin Hood, Zorro, Dracula, Sherlock Holmes, Frankenstein's monster, all the Wizard of Oz characters, King Kong, Hercules, Paul Bunyan. Like, it's just so cool that, like, if you have a great idea, you can make something out of these characters.
It is pretty cool. I mean, I think it's kind of shocking there haven't been more films like this, just pulling on old IP that is familiar, and you don't need to lay the backstory for everything. It's almost like a cheat code to, it's like, all right, we have this Dracula character, we have Hercules. It's like everyone has some familiarity with that. We don't need to spend 15 minutes getting the audience used to it. We can just dive right into the exciting part.
Yeah, there's no explanation why King Kong is on the screen. Everyone knows King Kong.
Right.
So we're on our sleeper round?
Yeah, sleeper picks. What you got?
I'm going to go, it's a very, very short scene, but there's a scene where Sean Connery beats up like the Invisible Man and like kicks him out of his room and like kicks him in the butt. I'm not sure. And then there was like he's like, from now on, there's a rule, you have to wear clothes on this ship. But it was just a very goofy scene that for some reason makes me laugh every single time I saw it.
And did you notice that they didn't actually get the rights to the Invisible Man? So it is an Invisible Man.
Yeah, there's a lot of those little tricks in this. Yeah, it's the guy who stole the formula from Invisible Man. Now he's just like the thief who's an Invisible Man.
All right, my sleeper pick is anytime in a movie, and this is usually an old-timey movie thing, but anytime you're traveling somewhere and they show the map with the red line on it of where the people traveling are going, I love that. I don't know why, but I just find that to be an awesome scene. If I ever am making a movie and someone's going somewhere, I will make sure to have that be included in the movie.
There was a Sesame Street movie, Follow That Bird, which was, I don't know if you saw when you were a kid, but that movie is just a highlighting of that feature. It's just, where's Bird? Let's draw the red line. And it's just all over every map. Every time a character goes closer, it's the red line. And I completely agree. Any movie that does that, any scene, I'm completely in.
Yeah, it makes me think the most of the Indiana Jones franchise.
That's probably a better reference than my Follow That Bird reference.
I don't know. I want to go check that out now.
All right, so we want to get to our superlative. What's our superlative this week?
Our superlative this week is most forced literary reference. Obviously, a movie just full of literary references. That's sort of the whole premise of the film. But in addition to all the characters, I'm sure all of you noticed that there were also a number of literary references peppered throughout the film, sometimes unnecessarily, sometimes maybe should have been left without. I had two that were really close, but I'm going to go with when they're walking out of M's library after first getting pulled together, and they're getting into Nemo's automobile. And he says, "This is my first mate." And the guy goes, "Call me Ishmael."
Oh,
There's no reason why he had to say that. We never needed to know his name. We never really talked to that guy. Again, no one ever says, "Hey, Ishmael, can you pass the mashed potatoes?" It was just for that one line, and it really felt out of place.
that's the only one I had written down. For some reason, the first line of Moby Dick, we're combining Moby Dick and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for some reason. It makes no sense. It's just like referencing, like, I've read a book too. It has nothing to do with the actual story.
The only other one I had was probably, I don't know, a few minutes before that scene when Quatermain shows up in the car. He says, someone says to him, you made good time getting here. He says, "Not as good as Phineas Fogg. Around the world in 80 days. And it's just like, what? Like, why are you mentioning that? This is totally irrelevant.
Yeah, that was so forced. Luckily, it was Sean Connery delivering the line, so it was a little bit better.
I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you stole my obvious one, I guess, just off the top of my head. A painting is missing when they're walking up the stairs at Dorian Gray's place, and there's like one area of the house that is like completely clean, obviously from a missing painting that was there. And Sean Connery points that out, and Dorian Gray's like, you don't miss a thing, do you? It's like, all right, we get it. Dorian Gray is from a painting. We get the story. Right. But that was another part is like they change parts of the stories that they reference so much, where apparently the Achilles heel of Dorian Gray in this is looking at the painting when that was not the case. I don't want to ruin the book that you just ordered, but he looked at the painting all the time, and it's what drove him to destroy the painting, which ultimately destroyed himself. But like looking at the painting was never a problem.
Yeah, although it did allow us to get that great scene again, borrowing from in Indiana Jones, where he ages instantly as a result of looking at it, which that scene was great.
That was incredible. Yep.
Aging, the painting getting younger was awesome.
Yep. Interesting that he chose not to close his eyes. I think he just really wanted to see the painting.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't you?
I would. I probably wouldn't try to acquire the painting if its proximity to me would kill me.
That did seem unwise.
Well, he's pretty full of himself, so I'm sure he just wanted it around. Let's get to one change to be a blockbuster.
The weighty category this week. So I watched this a number of times, and I think what I'm going to go with here is I think they needed to spend a little bit more time tying the sort of villain story together. Maybe some of the difficulty here was that there was misdirection. There was a reveal towards the end, but I never felt like I really understood what was going on with the villains, and that there was this central thing that everyone was fighting for that was just a little muddled. So maybe you just tighten up the villainry a little bit, and I think that could go a long way in fixing the plot here.
Yeah, I think they thought that like the name of the villain, once like, or the big reveal, was enough to solidify him being like an evil villain. But like, you know, the reference to like James early on in the movie, and it ends up being Moriarty, the arch nemesis of Sherlock Holmes. But his drive wasn't quite clear. It was to make money, I think, was the ultimate drive, was to make money, but he's spending a lot of money to make money.
Well, you got to spend money to make money. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, I think the villain could have been amped up a bit, at least have a clearer view, and maybe a little more explanation to his harpoon gun that he had early on in the movie.
Yeah, I just needed a little bit more, and I feel like it really could have just stitched the whole film together a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I have a few things, even though it's one change, but the first one, I think it's just, you got to trim this movie down. This can't be close to a 2-hour movie. This is always like a big sticking point in all of our episodes, but like the length of a movie matters a ton. If Lake Placid was an hour and 50 minutes, it wouldn't be the same movie. And this should have been close to a tight 90-minute movie. So once they went to Venice and they found out it wasn't really that important, and then they had to go to Mongolia, it was just, I don't know, there was some parts that clearly could have been been cut out and sort of streamlined a bit. So if it was a little bit shorter, that'd be good.
I agree with that. And I think easy X, maybe just cut the whole Tom Sawyer element of the film. I thought the sort of father-son, he lost his son, so he's sort of adopting Tom Sawyer. That really just felt very forced and unnecessary. I thought you could easily cut Tom Sawyer from this whole movie and nobody would really care. And I guess they had added Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer is not an original character. They added him, and this was crazy to me. They added him to appeal to more American audiences. It's like as if this was 1950 when someone's like, "Well," and he goes, I wouldn't see this movie, but now it has Tom Sawyer in it. Now I want to go see it. It's like,
right, as if Americans don't already like Sean Connery,
right? Or like know about Dracula or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like they have enough of these things that aren't just, white bread Americana that really you don't need to add that in.
Yep. I'm also going to go with a change would be maybe eliminate the car chase in Venice. It's odd to go to Venice, a place that has water running through the city and not many cars can really fit through. And that's where you have your car chase.
Yeah. It feels like that easily could be a boat.
It could easily be a boat. And I wanted more of the newspaper reactions. The first two in the beginning, it was great. I paused them and I read the other stories. I wish there was more spinning newspapers coming at us throughout the whole movie.
That's a great one. I love the move of pausing it and seeing what else is on there because they spend time on that, right?
They wrote real articles in those other articles. It was great.
Yep.
All right. Well, I guess that's a kind of a good segue to spin-off ideas. What is your spin-off idea for this movie?
So obviously it's very clear they were teeing this up for some sort of sequel, right? The ending there, maybe some wishful thinking from everyone involved that this could somehow catch fire, no pun intended, and result in a franchise. And my spin-off really plays right into the hands of the ending of the movie. So Quatermain comes back as expected based off the end of the movie, but it's not like you expect. It's more of a Pet Sematary situation where someone has concocted a spell to bring somebody back from the dead, and he is just not right. He is Quatermain, but he is evil. So he comes back, he's evil, he starts going around and he pulls in, a bunch of these other great literary villains. Some off the top of my head. He gets Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm sure she should be involved. Cujo, the dog from Cujo. He's obviously going to be, you need a dog in your crew. Long John Silver from Treasure Island. I mean, the list goes on. I'm sure there's plenty of classic IP that you could pull in here, maybe pay if you have to, but I think there's a lot there. And maybe there's even an element of a race of crazy mutant evil people that developed up in Mongolia from all the at the end of the movie, that case of the Jekyll's formula and all the blood that falls into the water, his box of tricks that falls into that water. Maybe that's a drinking supply. Maybe everyone who lives around there is suddenly getting these invisibility powers, and who knows? But something is there. Sean Connery's going to find it, and he's evil this time.
I'm a little speechless here. I wish you had gone second because that's nothing's going to top that. And it eliminates the problem that you said you would have in this movie with there's not a clear-cut villain. If the second one is now Sean Connery risen from the dead as the villain, assembling a team of the worst people in literature, how is that not the best developed villain that we could possibly get? That's an incredible premise.
Yeah, I wish I could see that. Rest in peace, Sean Connery. We couldn't get that together in time before his passing, but maybe it can still be done with CGI. I'm not sure.
Wow, that's great. I guess I'll go. So mine is just running it back as if this didn't happen. It's like movies like Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Batman. I would just want to do this over again. It's unfortunately without Sean Connery, but I'm sure we can get someone to fill that role and have that ensemble cast that we were talking about, and maybe stick a little bit closer to Alan Moore's story. And let's just run this back and have fun with it, because I think this is something that's a great, even the rotten reviews say how great of a premise this is. It just was poorly executed. So let's execute this correctly and give this movie what it's due, and just redo it again as if the first one didn't even happen. It's like Rocky 4. We're going to take out Rocky 4 from the franchise. Not Rocky 5. It's like it didn't even happen. There's no more brain damage anymore. We're just going to move it along as if that movie didn't even occur.
Yeah, that's a great call. And I think you're onto something there too, because apparently 20th Century Fox was kicking around the idea for just a clean reboot of this. But then Disney bought the 20th Century Fox film studio.
All right.
And that sort of killed the deal. I think Disney obviously has their own trove of IP and sort of thought that they didn't need to mine this well again. But I feel like we haven't seen the last of this franchise. Like I think there will be a reboot in our lifetimes, and hopefully they come through with the right sequel as well.
I hope so. I will definitely watch it. Do we want to get to our movie for next week and wrap this up?
Yes. So this is a podcast first.
Podcast first.
We have decided for the first time in the history of Slept On Cinema to do a double-blind movie. Neither of us have seen this before. We both saw the trailer and thought it was fantastic. We're doing Paycheck.
Yeah, you had said this to me, and I thought you were talking about Payback. I'm like, there's no way Payback is below 50%. And it was Paycheck. I had never heard of the movie, and then I watched the trailer, and it looks like the best movie ever. With Uma Thurman, Ben Affleck, a bunch of other like really, really big celebrities in this movie. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, and it's John Woo directing it. I mean, it looks amazing.
Yeah, a movie about reverse engineering. How could it go wrong?
So we'll see. We will enjoy this ourselves, and then see you guys next week.
See you next week.